one of those. It was uphill in the snow and we were barefoot stories.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, it's 20 miles away at the shortest place. I mean,
Mhm.
how long would it be for you to ride to 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 row 20 miles with your group?
Let's see, it takes about 15
How
minutes to
long
get
would
to
it be for
Scotland.
you to? Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, but I mean, how many knots an hour can you do if that's what? I mean, maybe that's the best.
I don't think we've ever measured that. We just
Yeah.
row. We just sillily enjoy the experience. We don't stand there with a tape measure.
Well, I mean, I know that people from the south of, like, from the coast in England, like the southern coast around Cornwall and that, used to go to, like Jersey and Guernsey to pick up, sort of, you know, contraband things, and they used to be able to make that in, relatively fast times, and according to what we would think is a massively far place away. So I'm just saying that, you know, a lot of times we limit ourselves on the things and say, that seems massively far away, but
Yeah,
maybe it's not so much.
it's not as long as far as you think. You go from Boundless on Solway to the mouth of the River Annan in Scotland. It only takes like 15, 20 minutes across the Solway.
Mm. Well, like I said, I mean,
Saw a seal the other week.
oh,
Yeah, hardly get any up here. Nice to see. There's supposed to be a pod of porpoises that come into the Solway, but they don't like people as much as dolphins do, so I don't think we'll see them.
what did the seal say to you? Anything? Did it sing to you? Did it say we're never going to get by unless we get a little crazy?
No, it didn't do that at all, Kevin. In fact, it just sort of looked at us oddly.
All right. Well, maybe nobody will get the seal reference. Come
Should
on.
have gone Kiss from a Rose. Everyone knows that song.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
missed a trick there, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. I just didn't happen to like that song as much.
Well, I
I always,
know, but
I always
everybody
like
knows it.
Crazy way better. Anyway.
It's like She's My Cherry Pie. It's what Warren's best known for, but if you mention it to them, they get rather pissy.
Why?
They don't like the fact that they're only remembered for one song.
Yeah. Heart so good make a grown man cry.
Well, if you're gonna, it's like if you're a musician, surely you want to be remembered for a song. How many
Well,
bands don't even have that?
Oh, I don't
yeah.
know.
I
Do you know
mean,
one thing that does my head in?
yeah.
Shall I go first quickly, Kevin? One
Yeah,
thing
no,
that does my head in
tell us what it does.
is if it's like, yeah, if a band is known for a particular song and it is nowhere near their best song, I mean, guys, if I say to you the band Motorhead, I challenge you to name one song other than that song.
Yes.
Which one's that song?
The one that starts with it's like a card and a deck of cards.
Yeah, that one.
I always think of Triple H when I think of Motorhead.
Ooh, that's more like it. The game. I covered that. I covered that and played it live on one of Revulsion's very, very few live performances. I opened with my
Is this when your
cover
kids
game.
were too young to object and you just
It
sort
was
of,
before I had kids. It was
wow,
it was
geez.
when I was at university. It was half a lifetime ago. I've
It
got
was
a
when he was at
photograph.
university. But it actually led to him having kids, if you know what I mean.
No, actually. So we're going down a bundle of rabbit holes. Firstly, Motorhead have written far, far better songs than Ace of Spades. I mean, songs like Killed by Death, Orgasmatron, Death Forever, um, The One to Sing the Blues, Over Your Shoulder. I could go on and on and on with so many incredible Motorhead songs, and none of which no, none of which were famous at all. And they've done some incredible Traitor. I mean, they've done some incredible tunes. And why Ace of Spades is remembered as their best song, I really don't know. They have done so many that are infinitely better. But it was the right song for the right time, I guess. Now, what playing live led me to was not being married and having kids. It led to me being in an emotionally abusive relationship for over a year, because the person running the Live Music Society at Kent University in the year 2000 was a lady who I've no idea what she's up to now, where she is now, but we got together. And yes, it was rather unpleasant for some time. but that's the truth, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I've listened to your music, so you kind of had it covered.
You're one of a kind, my friend.
Burn. Okay, but speaking of emotionally abusive situations, Tom, let me ask you a question, all right?
Yes.
This next weekend, I want you to forget about your wife and kids. I want you to drive up here with all of your gardening tools, and I want you to trim my garden and do some general yard work for me. And in return for that, I will let you stay outside on a bed you provided. How does that sound to you?
It sounds like if I tried to pull that off, I'd be lucky if I wasn't divorced by the time I reached South Mim services on the M25. Never mind reaching
But you can
Carlisle.
stay in my garden on a bed you've provided, and you have to bring your own food. Surely you want that. Surely anyone would want that. Kevin, you'd want that, wouldn't you?
I would not participate, nor have I ever participated in that relationship.
Well, congratulations to you, because you two are not as brain dead as Johnson's cultists, who apparently do exactly what I just described. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew A. Johnson, the bloody stupid twat that he is, and his deranged cult of drivelling imbeciles have now been tricked into doing his yard work for free. This Facebook post reveals that he will allow you to work in his garden, and in return, you can stay there on a bed that you provide.
Right. However,
Situation sounds like it needs a safe word.
what I did find interesting is that but if you read it all, and I was actually kind of, this is a sort of an annual thing. You know what I mean? This happens every year now. And so, but what I find was interesting was not that it wasn't going to happen again at a different location, because this is new. This is a newer place. But what I find was interesting is that he's going to give you the keys now, so you can lock up after it.
Oh yeah. He's not going to do anything. He's going to sit there on a lawn chair under a parasol, sipping lemonade, saying, "Yes, peasants, continue to work." For those of you who don't know, Matthew Johnson is my nemesis, and he runs a Bigfoot cult out of Oregon.
Well, do you not think that we should get him one of them, like Colonel Sanders, white bespoke linen suits and a hat, so he can and make sure that send him a recipe for mint juleps, so he can watch the people out in his yard. Now you all clean up over there.
Well, I can't really. Well, slave masters did provide a roof for their slaves, though. I mean, I'm not saying that they had it better, but they did get a roof.
Well, yeah, but I think
cultists aren't even getting that. They're spending a chilly Washington state night. But
I will say that it's going to be sort of Memorial Day weekend. It'll be one of the best weekends for to do, that kind of thing. And it'll be temperate, and so therefore, but if you read it, they're not doing it for nothing. They're not doing it for nothing because they do get to come back and be in they get to have like a weekend experience with the gang. So
yeah, they get to stay in his garden again at a later date.
well, but if you look at it from the standpoint now, you're assuming that everybody has something to do. Like I was just talking to somebody about this today. Like I was saying to Sam, like sometimes I just feel completely worthless, and I just feel like I don't have any, point in existence, in the world or whatever. And if I felt that way and I was by Dr. Johnson's and I thought, well, maybe I'll just go down there, check that out, and have something to do, maybe that would be the thing to do. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm saying is some people, you're a very busy man. You know what I mean? Whereas there's not everybody has that. So some people will, I think a lot of people volunteer for some things, to help themselves out. And so we may not agree with the volunteering of whatever, but I'm sure it's not want to be one of those things where if you go down there and you don't work very hard, they're gonna smack you around some and tell you that's no. You get to hang out with some people. That's all. You get to go to you get to be around people after 2 years of being locked away from everybody for a couple of years. So I mean,
For the protection of society, I assume. That's why you were locked away. I mean, come on, Kevin. I get the point you're trying to make. All right, I get the point you're trying to make. That doesn't bloody change the fact that he is abusing his cultists and making them work for him for free.
Who is this guy?
Well, he's it's a long story, Tom, but he's a man who, at one point in time, I'll tell the story the way I want to tell it, and then you break in, Richard. This is a person who Richard and I have gone to the mattresses over.
Well, it's how we met, Kevin. So. Yeah,
it is.
Don't forget to mention the pterodactyl.
I will. So at one point in time, whenever I believed that I saw a Bigfoot, the very first whenever that happened, I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. Didn't want to talk to anybody at all about it. I just wanted to keep it a secret because I knew that people who, up in this area, people had seen Bigfoot. People kept that sort of a secret, and that's the way it was. That's the way I wanted to leave it. I didn't want to go anywhere further with it. I taught on the reservation at that point in time. I knew that it was a sacred thing to most natives, and I was willing to leave it where it was. Now, I got drug into the thing a wee bit. You know what I mean? And
a wee bit. A wee bit.
Well, I was drug into it, and unfortunately, the very first place that we had gone to very first sort of major conference about that was Dr. Johnson's conference that he had in Bremerton. Well, he has made a metamorphosis over the years. And at one point in time, whenever he had started out, he's a psychiatrist, and he had seen this. He's seen this Bigfoot, he says, down by where was that at? The big underground caves in Oregon. Anyway.
The
Oregon Cave Junction or whatever. Cave Junction, Oregon. He says he was there with his family, saw a Bigfoot.
Let me just interject. And when he saw the Bigfoot, he didn't know how he was going to protect his family from it. Go on, continue.
Okay.
Well, what you really need to realize is that over the years, Dr. J has now when he tells a story, it's almost verbatim for the last time he told the story. And whenever he breaks into, there are certain clues and things in that where he will automatically break down on cue, you know, and so that makes it very, very difficult. Now, what I find interesting about it is at the time he was deemed one of the most credible people in the United States to have seen Bigfoot.
Stephen Fry interviewed him.
Right. So you have Stephen Fry. He was on Good Morning America. He was, Derek Randalls from the Olympic Project was a member of the BAFRO. He went down there, talked to him, said he was one of the most credible people he ever talked to ever. And I'm sure that I'm just going to get struck off somebody's lips because I just brought that up and made it public again. But,
oh no, I'm going to punch Stephen Fry if I ever meet him for that.
Yeah.
He can be on Blackadder all he wants. I'm still going to twat him for interviewing Johnson and give him any credibility whatsoever.
Right. Well, so that was the story then. You see, that was the story. Then Dr. Johnson then went out with Dr. York, who was a primatologist. I think he was a primatologist, and he had looked for Bigfoot in the foot. But he had a very specific methodology for trying to find Bigfoot, and the idea of the sort of interdimensional Bigfoot. So Bigfoot being anything more than a biological creature was just out of the question for Matt Johnson.
Yeah, and it was 100% flesh and blood. He had the SoundCloud files. He was, recording Bigfoot everywhere he went. He was getting noises. And wouldn't you know, those sneaky Bigfoot, they sounded exactly like barred owls and other ordinary nighttime sounds. But Johnson told us, and he was the most credible person, it was most definitely Bigfoot. And who are we to deny a man who needed to protect his family? Okay, carry on, Ken.
Well, so coincidentally, then he makes this big, huge change all of a sudden. It seems to me, and whenever
all of a sudden, the fact that the entire community was going woo had nothing to do with it. I'm sure.
Well, I understand that, but you understand whenever my intersection of Matt Johnson was during the transition where people had not necessarily all twigged on to the fact that he was doing this, right? So mine was somewhere in between. I met him somewhere in between the portal, Adam Davis portal. So I met him before the Adam Davis portal, and then the Adam Davis portal happened. Then I went with him, and then the other exodus supposedly happened after that. So I was in that swing. So in that year, it swung big time. It went from one way to the other way. You know what I'm saying? And so, I was up with Dr. J up in the mountains, and he was having very, very strange occurrences up in the mountains. And I will say, like I said, and I will say this again, I have experienced very strange things up in the mountains with Dr. J, and his interpretation that they were of a Bigfoot nature doesn't necessarily agree with mine, but something weird happened. I'll just put it that way. So something weird is up there. I'll stand by that till the day I die. And so that's neither here nor there. But so this is the thing that had to happen. So whenever Richard and I had met with, we're going through that, I had said something weird had happened. Dr. J was then throwing everybody else under the bus, saying Bob Gimlin, had said that he was going to write the forward for his book, and then he said he didn't do it, and everything else. Well, anyway, so this is why it comes down to the fact that pretty much don't trust anybody in Bigfoot. That's the way I'm looking at it, because it doesn't look like anybody in Bigfoot tells the truth. Maybe that is the most, I'm saying that bar none. You're not getting the truth. You're not getting the truth.
Yeah, the simple version of it is
Yeah.
Matt Johnson has been on a increasing train of escalation for about, well, almost 10 years now. What started off as a harmless attempt to make a little bit of pocket money for himself through merchandising and SoundCloud has now blown up into a full-blown cult. And
but I will say that I don't think Matt Johnson has ever made money with Bigfoot. I don't think that it's about the money. I really don't think it's about the money. I think it's and that's one of those things where I think a lot of people will say it's about the money, but I don't think it is about the money. I think it's about the recognition of him. He likes to be thought of as a sort of a messianic character.
yeah, well, I found that magazine article back when I was doing the blog that he gave an interview back when he was in university, and he said he was going to be the next Dr. Phil. He wanted to be a basketball player, but his knees gave out. He wanted to be the next Dr. Phil. He's just a twat, so no one wants to give him a TV show. So now he's running a Bigfoot cult.
He is a massive man, though. He's 6'9" or something like that, and he is huge. You know what I mean? He is a massive big man. And so, but like I said, there was, like I said, with a lot of different things. A lot of people say that with me, they say, well, there's which Kevin is on to the show today. Kevin 1, Kevin 2. I always look at it from the standpoint of, Matt has some endearing qualities to me, and some that and some that are not the ones that you don't like about him, and I don't like about him too. But I'm just gonna say, he there, from being in private conversations with him, sometimes he is a charismatic man, and he does care to a certain amount about other people, and he takes it too far sometimes. But what I never understood was, and I've never gotten a straight answer from it was that he says that when he saw Zorth the very first time down at Cave Junction, Cave City, he says that it disappeared in front of him, but he didn't tell anybody because he didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. But then that doesn't explain to me why he was such a total hater on people who said that Bigfoot could do those types of things. You know what I mean? So it doesn't,
allow me to float the idea that he was just making it up as he went along.
Is that possible, Richard? Are you saying that people just make things up as they go along and sort of try to adjust the story?
It's quite simple. Finding Bigfoot was all the vogue, so Bigfoot was a flesh and blood creature. Then the woo crowd started taking over, and Bigfoot became a supernatural thing. And Johnson just followed the trends. He was just chasing fame and attention and money.
Yeah.
And now he's gone mental. Like the QAnon thing. Jesus. I mean.
Oh, yeah, he's full on board with that.
Nothing anyone can tell me is ever going to convince me that QAnon is anything other than trailer park Scientology. Well,
they can try. They can usually track it back to the person who started it. It's like they can track it back to it's like, well, this dude started this rumor, and then they go back to the guy, and by that point in time, it doesn't matter. That's what I always find interesting about it is. Because if you said this is the guy who started it, you know what I mean? Like the guy who really started, this new rumor is a night watchman at a public storage lockup in Washington D.C. or whatever, and you can prove it. They'll say, well, that's what you would say, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can't get out of it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can literally start a rumor about anything, and then once you prove that it's not true, if you can prove it's not true, then people will say, "Well, of course you're going to try to prove it not true, because that's what you would do." Which
Hang on a
proves
tick.
which
During
makes
your entire explanation of the Johnson thing, you never once mentioned the pterodactyl.
Oh no. So the one morning I got up that I got up in the morning, and so where Soya is, there's a
Was.
where it was, well, or whatever. I mean, like physically, the physical location has not been taken away.
Or has it?
Well, maybe. So there's a hill, and you come down to a road, and the road intersects these two areas, and then there's this sort of a jut that comes out into it, and this sort of salient point goes out over this valley, right? And on the one side of the valley there is nothing, basically just drops off, and on the other side it drops down very slowly the other way. And so so there's this small field, I would say, in the size of maybe half of a football field, maybe. That's where everybody used to, like, put their things up. So I was laying on this thing in the morning, and we were looking at it, and this massive thing comes overhead, and I was looking straight up, and this thing, like I said, was a massive thing. I would have said that if I was trying to estimate size based on the fact that it was the size of the trees and everything like that, that this thing had to have like a freaking 30-foot wingspan or something, which I know is not possible. But and then it came over, and then arced off to the side where the big thing went, and it went into this valley, where you couldn't see it anymore. Now, I saw it for a couple of seconds. My wife saw it for a couple of seconds. Matt saw it for a couple of seconds. I think that, all I can say about it is that the fact that it was over me, I felt the downforce of the wings. So it wasn't like a helicopter, it wasn't like a plane, it wasn't like a glider, it wasn't anything like that. I felt the downforce of the wings as it passed over me. This had a massive thing. I said, God, that's got to be like a pterodactyl, So that's what I called it. I don't know if that was a mistake. Probably wasn't the best choice of words, but whatever it was massive, and that's what I saw.
So that's it. That's the whole Johnson story, Tom. What do you think?
It sounds sounds to me like he, I don't know, he's either delusional or believes his own lies, which is pretty much the same thing, or is just sort of desperate. I don't. It seems to me somebody who's desperate to make a name for themselves, despite reality was kind of not complying.
Right. I mean, I would agree with
That's
that.
how
But yeah.
my
But,
impression.
Interestingly enough, since the Dr. J thing, is lying to make ourselves famous a rarity anymore? It seemed to me like at a one point in time you could almost say, well, Dr. J should be ashamed of himself. How could anybody that was in a piece of a position of authority or whatever lie about what they're experiencing or what they believe in order to take people down the garden path, and then at the same time, between the political situations in this country and in Britain, and then how can you look at that and say, oh well, it's definitely wrong? It's definitely wrong. It's worked, and it has worked, and maybe Matt Johnson is just so smart that he just saw he just floated the trend before the trend was a trend, if you know what I'm saying. And we're just angry about the fact that he saw the fact that eventually you could just make up shit and get away with it. And we're just pissed off because we didn't come up with the idea first.
Blimey. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Maybe that's too deep.
I've met a few compulsive liars in my life. Sorry, have I just cut out, or can you all hear me okay?
No,
Yeah,
no.
we can hear you.
Yeah, no, we
Good,
can hear
great.
you. Richard muted himself. He was doing something there.
Okay, I just wondered what was going on. No, I've met a few compulsive liars in my life. Oh my word, they've been in various different ways. Some lying about very trivial things, just trying to be cool all the time and just insecure and desperate to impress. And I met one guy who was who I worked with. He was a teacher, and my word, he came out with like really, really serious and really sinister, tall stories that you've no way of technically disproving, but they're just so unlikely. And he told so many that there was something really like unnerving and jarring about some of the things this guy used to come out with. Whoa. I mean, this is really, really bad taste, but this is, oh, hang on, wait. No, I know. I'll say a more tasteful one. I know. It was just like, we used to call this guy Four Ball Paul, i.e., if you were to turn around to him and say, I've got 3 testicles, he would say, well, I've got 4, as in, so Four Ball Paul. And he used to come out with things like, somebody mentioned the topic of pregnancy came up in a staff room conversation. And he just came in with, yeah. I knew a family once, and you were a couple that were having a baby, and then they were in the hospital, and then out popped a little boy, and then out popped a little girl, and then out popped another little girl. Triplets, just like that. And I just looked at him and I said, what? And no one was expecting them? No. None of the midwives? No. And none of the scans picked up anything? No. Okay, mate, whatever. He just used to, they just used to come out of his mouth like something else. I mean, what was that? Someone mentioned, like we mentioned gardens. Okay, coming back to this doctor in his garden, Dr. Johnson in his garden. This guy, someone mentioned gardens. He says, oh, yeah, we got loads of acres of land. We never need to buy any fresh fruit and vegetables. We grow all of our own. I said, what, seriously? Yeah. What, all year long? Yeah. What, so, even without the winter, you grow all your fresh fruit and veg? Yeah. Oh, God. He claimed he had a wife. If he did, I would love to have met her and just said, what is with this guy? And just to have had, like, somebody who knows him properly and must surely have known that he was like this, offer some semblance of an explanation as to why he was the way he was. Yeah, it was, ooh, blimey, he was a one-off, that guy. Whoa.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I find interesting about it is that we've almost got to the point where that's like I said, it's hard. It's hard whenever we don't all agree on what is the truth anymore. I guess that's my sort of frustration. That's been my frustration this week. Is that
the truth has become rather subjective, sadly. There's no such thing as absolute truth anymore.
It just post-truth alternative facts. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fact. I mean, that was a big thing of Trump's alternative facts, or the Trump camp, at least as far as I remember. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing where those folks still believe that they're correct in almost every way. So um, the the problem is whenever you get into divergent facts, that these things become really sort of strange in the point where you can't. I mean, and this is where you've got to sort of realize that. I mean, for example, if you look at sort of history, because I was a history teacher for a long time, and you would think, okay, for a long time, you could make the argument that like history is written by the winners. You know what I mean? That's true, and you could say, okay, well, maybe you could try to upset that a wee bit by trying to bring in the narrative of people who didn't win, and that is a very, very dangerous way to go anymore, because no matter what happens you just cannot, especially in America, it seems like, agree on what's happened in this country for the last 300 years. You can't agree on it. I mean, to some people it was perfectly just great. Everything was fine, everything's great. So other people, it was rotten and terrible. You can't get anything past it. Never the two shall meet. Never, and that's fine, and everybody's going to do that. But you better not. But depending on where you are in the United States, you better figure out where you are before you start teaching one way or the other way, or even saying that some people look at history this way, although there is an alternative to how some people view history. I mean, that's even sort of a strange thing. You know what I mean? Which is very interesting from that standpoint, because there's just as far as I'm concerned, there's really no point in trying to teach American history anymore. It doesn't exist. Somebody will
just give us like a form letter and tell them to fill in the blanks.
Yeah,
or whatever.
please fill in what you think history's about, and then you get an A on it. And that's, I mean, that's really realistically it. Because if it makes you feel good, bad, indifferent, I mean, it seems like the truth is very, very, very sort of illegitimate as to actually what people want to hear about. I always get this argument with people who are, Texan, you know what I mean? And the idea that Texas as a nation was a nation for about 10 years after, like the Alamo and everything like that. And it went bankrupt, and it had to be, it had to be bought out by the United States in order to bail out. It's the fact that it went completely bankrupt. It was really poorly managed. And now you say that to a Texan, and I never understood that, because you can look it up in the Texas Archive of History and everything like that. Clearly says it all. But if you say that to a Texan, they'll freak out, like you're lying. Like you're lying about it. You know what I mean? Well, that didn't happen, and that's clearly not what happened. Even though you can say, this is how much they were bankrupted by. This is how much the United States had to pay off the debts of the Republic of Texas for, and this is how much everything else. And even though all that's there, and dollars and cents, you better not say that that's true. Because it does, because that does not make the idea of that the world is not bigger than Texas make anybody feel good about it. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's this thing about it, where you say, well, Texas should become its own country again, and then you say to people, well, if you do anything like that again, you probably bankrupt yourself sooner than sooner, sooner than 10 years from now, and they flip out. They flip out. How dare you bring up relevant facts and history from 1860? How very, very dare you?
Has that's I can well believe that. I really can. Just through, well, just people who don't agree with it's complicated and difficult, but basically people who don't buy into the established view of history and the belief that the media are, generally speaking, capable of reporting the truth.
Right.
So I can believe that there's people like that. I mean, have either of you guys had anyone try to convert you to QAnon or the fall of the cabal or anything else?
Nah. No, really, no, because like I said, I grew up in Northern Ireland, and so I understood at a very, very young age. There was I was lucky enough to realize since the minute I could understand that there was two divergent histories that had to do with Northern Ireland. There was the British Northern Irish history, and there was the nationalist Irish history, and they were both being taught completely different ways in schools at the time. And so people say to me, well, why are you depressed then? Because, and then I say, well, because this is what you've got to look forward to. 30 years of people bombing and shooting each other in America. Anytime soon. Anytime soon it'll happen, because it'll be like, oh, okay, well, this will be the one that and people don't understand that that's just Christian people fighting over Christianity. I mean, we're not even fighting off of anything else, Like in America, they don't seem to think that once it breaks down to Christians against Muslims and Jews, that it'll be Christians against Christians, because again, it'll be, well, Catholics aren't really Christians, and vice versa, and this and that, and everybody. Nobody's gotten to that point yet, but I've lived it, so that's why I just sit back and go every weekend and say, yeah, this is even more depressing than the last weekend. So, but I always look at it from the standpoint of everybody is trying to. I mean, here's the thing, Tom. If all that's true, and the world is full of Illuminati, Freemasons, Jews, everybody's trying to control the government.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Gordon Bennett. Yep.
If that's been true,
what you mean.
It's been true for forever and a day. You know what I mean? And the average person has had no say over any of it. And what makes people think now, in today's day and age, that they will have a say over it? I mean, because this is the thing about communists and everything. You know who else didn't like communists and Jews and Freemasons and everybody like that? The Nazis. You know what I mean? Yep. And so what are you going to do? I mean, this is where you're at. This is where I'm at. And I'm not saying it's just anything other than the fact that it's, once you get down to the whole idea of it all, power is more sort of I don't know how you want to say that, sort of seductive to people than democracy. And that's just the way that is. And so whether we get rid of democracy or not will basically come down to the fact that, can we allow other people to have an opinion or not? And it just doesn't seem like we're getting to the point where we're at that anymore. You know what I mean? Just seems like, I mean, owning the libs or owning the conservatives or owning anybody and making them do what I think you should do is not democratic in any way, shape, or form. Forcing somebody to do something.
Oh no, that's always been, the far right and the far left's problem is they're both fascists, just in different ways.
Right. Well, I mean,
yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But then at the same time, the problem with it is, guys, is that, there is no major draw to saying, yeah, I'm just middle of the road Johnny. You know what I mean? Everybody should get along and sort of be happy.
Yep.
That doesn't create drama.
Hipsters do not make great politicians.
They should all be eradicated.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear you say that, Richard, because I'm not massively dissimilar to the average hipster. I mean, vegan.
Oh, they're all scumbags with their bloody cargo shorts and their beanies and their tight t-shirts, drinking beer out of jam jars. I'm surprised they breathe oxygen so mainstream with their tofu froyos. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them!
Okay, Eric Cartman.
Can't you? Well, okay, so let me ask you a question here, Richard. If, for example, you set up a totally organic farm in your house with a micro brewer beer scenario selection and some small batch whiskey, you don't think that you could get some people up to your place from sort of the
I don't mind people that do that. People that do that are fine. It's the hipsters that frequent those places that annoy the crap out of me.
Yeah, but if you were good, if you were
critical, dumbass beer wearing.
That's what I'm saying. Why don't you use the hipster? I mean, so let's say, for example, if Matt Johnson was using hipster labor to work on his property. Which in a way you can make the argument that it sort of is, because it's all woo, crystal loving, hugging, extra dimensional karma trippers coming onto your property. How do you know? So basically, so he is sort of, maybe he is owning the libs. He's owning the libs. He's getting the libs at his property to work for free. Whereas,
you don't have to be liberal to be a hipster. There are right-wing hipsters.
Oh, well, I'm sure there are.
You never heard of the log cabin Republicans? You get
the log cabin Republicans.
You get people that shouldn't be on one side, on that side, out of spite. And, some hipsters will be Republican because just so they can be, I don't conform with the rest of the hipsters. I'm a liberal. I don't believe in gay marriage and abortion should be illegal. God, that's so pathetic!
It was just funny that you said log. Dude, I don't think for a while there's been log cabin Republicans.
They're all out in the closet now. But.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I don't think that log cabin Republicans as a group would call themselves Republicans anymore. And even if they were, the Republicans who are the new Republicans wouldn't call log cabin Republicans anymore. That's for sure. There's a lot of Republicans kicking other Republicans out of the party and now saying you're not a real Republican. You know what I mean? Because I would say when I was 18, I in America, I registered to vote, and I registered as a Republican. I voted Republican. I've said this before. I've said this with Phil and everything else. And now, because I am not freaking, on the group of being like Pinochet or something like that, some Bolivian right-wing crazy person, I am no longer a Republican. I am just simply a Democrat, or or some communist.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean that's what happens if you don't agree with every single thing. That's it. You're not one of them anymore. You've all got to be towing the same line. What makes me laugh is they go, "We're trying to protect our democratic republic." No, you're not. You're trying to install a fascist dictatorship where everyone does exactly what you say or do. It's just fucking
That's
stupid.
Yeah.
you mentioned fascism again, Richard, and that's fascinating. Your idea that the right and the left are just both fascist in different forms. Well, it's when I did A-level politics and stuff, I really loved the theoretical discussion about whether politics, sort of the political left-right spectrum, is linear or if it's in fact a circle, because when you look at, say, Hitler and Stalin, neither of them would admit it, but they've got far more in common than they have apart, because extreme communism and fascism or Nazism or anything, they both believe in the complete supremacy of the state. They both believe in sort of the crushing of individual liberties and freedoms in their various ways. They have absolutely no value of democracy. The difference is that one of them believes in the supremacy of their race and crush all other races brutally, mercilessly, violently, and murderously. And the other one says, crush all other social classes brutally, ruthlessly, and utterly murderously.
Right, right.
So,
But
yeah.
the Volk and the proletariat are basically the same thing. If you I agree with you in that. And what you're saying is that the idea of I mean, and a lot of people think that the Volk meant folk. Like it was like it wasn't. It was like the people. The people, were from the land, and this is the thing. And this is where the whole idea of these unite their rights in Charlottesville, whenever they were saying blooded soil, that was a totally German Nazi thing. You know what I mean? They used to say exactly that, bluten soil, whenever they were, basically going, I mean, it's like so Nazi, it's not even funny. And then they say, well, don't call us Nazis. But then the thing that's interesting about it is that this proto uh, uh, person, that this Volkish person, this person, this creation of the land, the salt of the earth, uh, is the same as the proletarian worker, the person who makes things. It's the same idea. The farmer worker, and the proletarian worker, same thing. They just don't need these large overburdening, people to tell us what to do. And basically, in a lot of ways, we just don't need education. We don't need these smart people telling us what to do. We don't need technology. We don't need any of these different things, which is interesting because funnily enough, science comes in and takes the place of religion, and you can see that that's not working out very well. That religion's fighting back now at this point in time. That science is not important in a lot of parts of the free world. You know, and so therefore we're not going to worry about science, whether science is accurate, right? Science is right, or whether it's not. We're going to worry about whether religion is important. So, like I said, it's just one of those things where, from that standpoint, whereas Karl Marx said that the religion is the opiate of the masses, almost in a fascistic sense, it's the same thing. You use religion to control people. It's exactly what you do. So therefore, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, or anything like that, a lot of people, unfortunately, will look at the, you know, they'll say, well, why do some people in America seem to act out of their own best interests? And some people will directly point to religion and say that's why. That, that they were doing it for religious reasons, and that's why they're not acting in their own best interest. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the argument that they're going to make, in a lot of ways. So, you get to the point where logic versus faith comes into it, and you get into this argument of not understanding where other people come at it from. I'm for you. If you think something's right, don't, or something's wrong, don't do it. But just don't tell me what I'm supposed to do with my time. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. And technically speaking, that's the way that America was really meant to be founded. Whether anybody wants to admit it or not is a totally different thing. But anyway,
Post-truth, we don't need to follow one specific history anymore. We can just make up our own.
Well, that's it.
But I'm just going to wrap things up. Yeah, that seems like a natural stopping point. What do you guys want to talk about next week?
Well, isn't Niki going to be back with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, hopefully?
Yeah, I suppose we should talk about
And
that.
I don't know if I dare mention this over the podcast, Richard, but do we need to sort of start thinking about some horrible methods of torture or execution for that thieving member of Niki's family?
We definitely do. That wasn't cool. But that was a sick burn I pulled on her. And it's going to keep me going on the cold winter nights. I'll be able to look back on that and go,
Should we leave that as a cryptic cliffhanger?
Yeah, that's a good cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But, if she doesn't come, or if I manage to talk her out of the ludicrous topic, what would you guys like to talk about?
I'm not sure. Just to be clear, everybody, I am joking. I have no malice towards any member of Niki's family or anyone else. It's all a bit of a good laugh, and it will all be made clear next week. But as for talking about, no, I'm too aware of a potential court case in my mind. I'm aware of in this world, you can't be too careful to avoid the defamation suit.
Yeah. You know what?
Maybe it's part of my designated safeguarding leave.
If that person sues you for saying that, I will literally shit in their bed.
Okay.
All right, there you go. And I'll make sure I eat a lot of peanuts and stuff beforehand.
So, topic next week. Okay. Do we have any ideas, or are we just going to call it a night?
We can talk about Casey and Vicky White. That was pretty funny. That was a good story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I'm not likely to be around next week anyway. Actually, I've done.
You said that last week. In fact, you said all week, and you know what? I'm just going to say it was very irritating because you were like, "Oh, I'm not going to be making the show next week," and I was like, "Okay, fine, that's cool." And then the next day you were like, "Oh, I might make the show after all." I was like, "Okay, Tom, okay," and then you were like, "No, I'm definitely not going to make the show."
Right. Okay. I'm very, very lucky to have been able to make it tonight because I've been on. I'm doing this from the my room in the residential. I'm just erring on the side of caution. I'm erring on the side of caution. That's all, Richard.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing, Tom. I'm not.
Okay. Well, it's possible I'll make it next week, and I'll leave it that ambiguously.
Yeah.
That's cool. He's a man of mystery. Will he be here? Will he won't? Nobody knows. Few care either. But okay.
Good night, good people.
Oh, that one got me.
Adios, amigos.
Hasta luego. See you later, guys.
Cheers,
You
everyone.
suck.